you're looking to get to $1 million a month, make sure you pay attention. Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome into today's video. My name's Jeremy Haynes and I've got a banger for you here today. There is one distinct way, and only one distinct way, in order to achieve $1 million months, and that is growth mode, okay? Growth mode is critical when it comes to you achieving $1 million months and at least increasing the probability of getting there. A lot of businesses, they end up at a couple hundred grand a month and they find themselves in a completely different mode, sometimes not even being self-aware of it, and it's this survival mode, okay? Let me get started with a story for you. We have a client account that we're working on, and we had a sales team bring us into the account. The previous advertiser was just doing a horrendous job of bringing in qualified, well-framed people. The sales manager and the sales team knew that we were the guy to be able to overcome that problem, and we did. We did a tremendous job at that. To be clear, this kick-started growth mode, okay? So after we solved this problem for the sales team, the next evident thing is scale, okay? Start the scaling process. So we do just that. This is exactly what we've got to do, plan, step by step. And it was pretty simple, right? The sales team needed to consistently hire new salespeople, essentially week over week over week. There was such a demand for what this specific business was doing that, without exaggeration, I could fill completely a new closer's calendar within about a day. So if I had my ads spending about $1,800 a day to upwards of like $3,000 a day, I could fill a new closer's calendar within that literal day based on the cost per qualified call I was getting. And if you let that same set of ads run at that level of spend for a full 24 hours, they would be booked for a total of about 3 days out. So if I ran those ads at that level of spend for about 2 days in a row, they would be booked for the entire week, okay? So my point being, this is why we had to start the process of having the sales team consistently hire and bring in new people, week over week over week over week. And I was like, just to the business owners, hey, you guys are comfortable with this, you understand the implications of what we're doing here, okay? So as we get started with, spending more money, okay, and the ad spend goes up and up and up and up, well, the other thing that has to happen is, for that to even occur, is the sales team has to hire, week over week over week over week, so we can ensure that, obviously there's more money coming in week over week over week over week as well. Obviously, we're gonna be judged off the ROI of this whole thing. We're not just gonna spend money if a new sales rep is terrible, they'll get fired, replaced, etc. So there might be an occasional slump week throughout that process, or at least like a plateau week. Now, to be clear, as I'm talking to the sales rep, this is just super obvious plans, hand in hand, 1 + 1 = 2, okay? And we take this to the business owners and they're all gung-ho. They're like, yeah, do it, go ahead, approved. So we start the process. Now, I don't know, it was like 3 weeks later, maybe a month later, the business adds randomly like $300,000 a month in expenses, okay? And I won't sit here and describe like what it was, but simply put, for about a quarter, okay, an entire quarter, there was gonna be an extra $300,000 a month in expenses. And these were not like direct revenue-driven expenses. These were essentially like bloated expenses that, because they didn't produce any revenue, had to be placed somewhere else. Well, in this case, because me as the advertiser and the sales manager essentially being responsible for all of the revenue generating in the business, this is a very high ticket business, so there's not any revenue that comes from anything else. And even if they did sell something like lower ticket and there wasn't salespeople required, it still would not be impactful enough to cover the amount of expenses and profit at the same time. So long story short, me as the advertiser and the sales manager were responsible for all the revenue in the business. And long story short, we now have an extra $300,000 that this business per month is trying to justify goes towards like, okay, this is an expense on your line items now in your financial model. You got to cover for it with additional ROAS and additional revenue. Now, being A players, we aren't necessarily opposed. We understand that, well, look, I mean, that's not a cost to the revenue from what we produce, but regardless, like, if we got to work around stuff like that, that's just how it goes. We work in the business. We don't own the business. If that's what they say, that's what they say. We inherit the fact that, okay, from our call funnels, from our webinar funnels, like this is just something that we've got to factor in now in terms of our ROAS, we've got to improve some of the statistics here. Now, they tell us that, and we're totally cool with it. And we're like, all right, great, let's start the process. And then because these $300,000 in expenses got added to the business, it kind of made them start looking at like what they potentially needed to cut, okay? Now, some of the bigger expenses in this business are a few things. Number one, sales commissions. Number two, ad spend, okay? Now, these are revenue-driven expenses, okay? So in growth mode, revenue, you have to understand what revenue-driven expenses are versus what non-revenue-driven expenses are, okay? They are drastically different, and you've got to know. If you do not know, then to be clear, you will do what this business was a about to do, thank God they have people like me and this sales manager in the business, because we do not tolerate them coming to us and saying things like, hey, we potentially need to limit the ad spend for this next month. Well, it's like, well, no, you just said you need to make this much more money per month no matter what. Why in the world would you tell us we need to spend less money? That's gonna put you into survival mode, okay? That's how easy it is to flip the switch from growth mode to survival mode. And there are infinite ramifications of doing this, and I'll go over several with you here now, okay? Let's use the example that we let them flick the switch and go into survival mode. Here's what starts to occur just in terms of the domino effect that they kickstart, okay? Number one, sales team loses confidence in hiring, okay? So they didn't want to just like, okay, hey, you spent, 140K last month, only spend 140K this next month, which once again, without sitting here just hammering the fact that it makes no sense when you want to stay in growth mode and make more money, that's a different thing that we can sit here and hammer on. If they said that, okay, hey, you can only spend 140K again next month, well, what would that be for the sales team? So to be clear, the sales team, well, all their hiring processes would have to stop. Hiring's about a 3 to 4 week process when you're a sales manager. It's not like you just go out, instantly hire top talent, and they just come into the business and are there. Like, no, you gotta recruit, you gotta essentially sell the opportunity to top talent, you gotta staff the top talent, train the top talent, get them onto the calendar and fill top talent's calendar. Otherwise, they're leaving. At any step of that process, if you turn off that individual who's top talent, you know what happens? Guess what? Here it is. Simple, black and white, okay? Top talent, they talk to each other. Word circulates extremely quickly, especially in an industry where you're hiring talented closers, okay? Tight-knit, group-oriented, community-oriented, word gets around quick. If this guy goes out and let's say just burns, keep in mind, if they say we can't keep hiring over the course, remember, we're hiring new people weekly, typically 2 people per week, okay? Those people, they would end up in a position where there'd be eight total people, okay? From 2 per week, 4 weeks in a month, 8, okay? It'd be 8 total people that no longer get staffed on this account. 8 total people that go out there and say, hey, the sales management team that was gonna hire us, they literally abandoned the opportunity, told us that we couldn't do it anymore. And then on top of that, what would that do for the sales management? Well, they would have less confidence in the client next time they try to kickstart into growth mode. Next time they try to kickstart into growth mode, you know what would happen? The sales team would be like, well, listen, yeah, there can be additional lead flow, but the last time we tried to kickstart this thing and put our word on the line that we were gonna go out there and hire a bunch of folks, you guys tried to kick it into survival mode instead and limit the ad spend, or even worse, cut the ad spend in an attempt to save expenses, even though it's a revenue-driven cost. Therefore, we can't go confidently hire more people. You gotta show us over a sustained, consistent period of time that you're actually gonna spend, and then we'll go hire. You see? So it creates this this duality. Survival mode doesn't save money, That's the opposite of what it does. Survival mode puts everybody in the company in this position of okay, we're contracting. It's expansion or contraction. There is literally no in between. There's no coasting. There's no shit stays the same. It is you grow or you start to die. Okay, that's it. That's why most businesses experience the ups and downs. They switch on and off between growth mode and survival mode. And then as a result of this, once again, they get confused when they go through long durations of expansion and then long durations of contraction. Because I refer to this all the time. If you've sat here and watched any of my videos before, it's this concept called the bullwhip effect. It's when we take an action, it doesn't just immediately have the result that it later incurs. It has to pick up through time like a little fucking rock going into a pond. The ripple effect, right? Ripple gets stronger as it goes out. This is an example of that. Like them saying, okay, hey, we're in survival mode now. We're gonna cut ad spend costs. Like I said, the next result of that is the salespeople don't confidently hire. They abandon everybody that they were hiring. Next time around, when you wanna start expanding again, you immediately have a delay. You immediately have a delay because the sales team's not gonna trust that you wanna stay in growth mode. So it's like growth mode is it's like you either have everybody in full trust, making decisions confidently that we're growing and expanding, or you have everybody in this mindset of okay, I've got to watch out for my own ass here and I've got to cover all my bases to make sure that I'm not about to lose my job or I'm not about to go, burn my reputation or, I've got to protect myself. Dude, survival mode sucks. It lowers the probability dramatically to hit $1 million months, okay? So to be clear, this business's big mistake that they were about to make, once again, that both the sales manager and I pushed against, educated them. These people run this business. They apparently don't know a lot about paid ads and just how this all works, So you have to make it black and white for them. You have to say, listen, just show us where the revenue comes from, okay? Show us where the revenue comes from. If you cut off all paid ads as this example, and you attempted to save money, you're actually losing, all the revenue, because to be clear, paid ads produces this ROAS. Paid ads produces this ROAS within that credit card billing cycle, and it produces this much ROAS in the next 30 days, and it produces this much more ROAS in the next 30 days. And you could show them, look, your money turns into more money within the credit card billing cycle to pay it off. Your money turns into even even more money in the next window, by the way, and it turns into even more money in the 30 days beyond that, okay? And then all of a sudden that business owner is like, yeah, you guys are right. As a matter of fact, go ahead and spend more money, right? Which is the right decision. That is the right decision, okay? I'll give you another example. We had, oh man, this client, this is such a sad story, you know? And I honestly hate telling it, because it just sucks, you know, it just sucks. So we had a client, man, they got all the way up to $5.5 million a month. It was awesome. You know, they were steamrolling everybody in their niche, and they were doing a tremendous job. They were buying businesses out, which helped further expand, obviously, their revenue and their overall capacity to deliver. They had a little over like 800-ish clients, and they were delivering. They were actually doing a good job. They were delivering for people. They had all these people in motion, and they had over like 300 staff. They had a crazy amount of staff. At one point, I remember they had just payroll alone was like $1.5 million a month. Okay, now to be clear, as a business, it's important to note like how this business model worked a little bit first, okay? They would charge an amount on the front end and then they'd have a rev share on the back end. So it's like, you know, yeah, they'd make a lot of money on the front end, but they could make and were making a lot of money on the back end as well from these rev shares, okay? So at a certain point, they realized, they were like, okay, we've got so many clients now. Like if we just keep expanding like this, you know, what's the point? We could make much more profit and have less overall, you know, kind of like management overhead and stress and like fatigue that comes from just running this monster, and it'd be a little more attractive to go sell it because whoever buys it could then immediately turn on front-end acquisition again. So they had a really good plan here. So they decided, they were like, okay, we're gonna shut off front-end acquisition. Like we're just gonna, you know, dramatically reduce it, okay? And that was their initial plan, was like, yeah, in the future, we wanna cut it off completely, but like the first phase was, we're gonna dramatically reduce front-end acquisition, and we're gonna focus heavily on back-end fulfillment and ensuring that, you know, we make as much money as possible on these rev shares. Now, they start that process. Keep in mind, over 300 something on staff, there was a good like 130 of them that were related to front-end acquisition. And as I said, they didn't just immediately phase it out completely. They went through like a 2-phase approach. So the first phase was to cut 60 of these like 120 employees. Okay, because they didn't need them anymore. And that was gonna lower their overhead. And in addition to that, once again, it was gonna enable them to start the process of focusing on the back end. So they do, they cut 60. Now this company, they made a terrible mistake. They failed to remove these people from Slack. And in addition to that, they failed to be like, you know, radically transparent about sharing why, like they're being fired. They didn't say, hey, you know, we're letting people go because of this plan that we have. They just did like a, I don't know, very like, it just didn't have any transparency. It was very like simple, almost like shallow explanation of why these people are getting let go. And obviously, if you know employees, like they don't want to lose their jobs. Nobody wants to lose their job. Nobody wants to lose their income, especially when there's a single income, like, you know, that impacts people in obviously tremendously negative ways, and it creates a lot of instability in their lives. So people become very upset naturally, okay? And because they didn't handle it that well, like all this aggression got pointed towards the company. All this like, hey, I'm pissed about this, all got directed towards this company. Now this particular company, they operated in a space that I would consider like, even after people buy, they're still skeptical. It's important to note, like, okay, let's say I wanna build a massive building in downtown Miami. It's like, I could go find the contractors and the construction company that's gonna help aid me in doing that. I could then find like, you know, the architects and the interior designers that are gonna like, you know, fulfill on the project. And even if I give these people an entire bank loan worth of money in order to go accomplish this project, as the person who's responsible for paying back the bank loan, like you're gonna naturally feel skeptical until the project's accomplished and you're successfully paying back your bank loans. Okay, and that's an example on a pretty grand scale, but like it's the same thing everywhere. It's like if I go to a pizza shop and I say, hey, I want a pizza, and let's say I've never been there before, dude, literally until the pizza like lands on my table and I get to have a bite and I'm like, that was good, I'm skeptical about the fact whether the pizza is gonna be good or not. So customers remain skeptical until they get the result. Now this particular company, they had a lot of customers. They had like call it a 24-month period of time before a person was probable to not only get the result, but like exceed the result that they expected. So you can say at a minimum, it was gonna take like 12 to 16 months for a person in that business type to get to the point where they had the like satiated moment of I had the bite of pizza and I feel accomplished and like the result is achieved, okay? Now to be clear, they fire 60 staff, okay? Staff are mad, they're upset, they're pissed. They didn't get removed from Slack. So right away, all the staff are like, you know, like blah, 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 blah. They're just pissed, you know, throwing shade at the owners. And to be clear, these owners were actually very responsible. In total, I think they did like 50 something million in revenue, okay? And through profit distributions, the most responsible way to take money out of the business on a quarterly basis, in total, from the duration of time since they started until it all came crashing down, they took in total about $3 million, okay? There were 2 business partners in total. One party took $3 million, the other party took $3 million. That's $6 million out of like 45 or $50 million. It's a very small percentage, okay? And once again, didn't just like use the company account like a personal account, like a lot of business owners not making $1 million a month do. They responsibly took profit distributions, which means on a quarterly basis, they had an agreed upon percentage of what was left over in profit, and only a percentage of the profit would get distributed between the two business owners, okay? Now, one business owner versus the other was very flashy, okay? Had a car with doors that go up, had like nice watches, lived in a nice place. And it's important to note, like I have 2 Ferraris as an example, and I'll never forget this. Like one time I have 3 maids, one set of my maids, like 2 of them were like laughing about how much my cars were worth. And I don't speak any Spanish. So my fiance, like she's talking to him and she's like, hey, wait, what are you guys joking about? And they thought that my 2 Ferraris, okay, I have a Ferrari 458 and I have a Ferrari FF. In total, maybe like $350,000 in cars, okay? Just in those 2 cars. They thought that the Ferraris were worth millions of dollars each. Like, they don't know any better. So to be clear, they think to themselves like, oh, those are $1 million cars. They're not, obviously. But to be clear, to the people who don't know, like that's what they're worth. People who don't shop for like Lambos and Ferraris, and like once again, this guy, he bought a lot of nice watches. Like when you see and hear like rappers as an example, like flexing about particular watches, and then you like show up in that watch, same kind of logic. Like they don't know what that watch is worth. They don't shop for that watch. You don't really know what those things cost until you start dabbling and liking them and potentially buying them, Very few people know what those things cost. So all they do, simply put, the staff get fired, they're angry, they look for reasons, okay? When there's not a strong reason why as to why these staff got let go, they seek reasoning, as all people do. So the reason that they started concluding to was, well, this owner took too much money out of the business, okay? And the only conclusion for that, because once again, there's no transparency into the fact that he only took $3 million. But even that, like, to you and I sitting here talking about making $1 million a month, like, dude, you and I both know $3 million over 2 years, that's $1.5 million a year. Like, that's not a lot of fucking money, okay? It's not, and that's pre-tax. So it's like, dude, that's not a lot of money. But once again, to regular people who work in an employment job, it's like, dude, $3 million sounds insane to even say that, even though I'm trying to make it sound small, because it is. But my point being, okay, once again, doors that go up, doors that go like this or like this, multi-million-dollar cars apparently, okay? Watches that rappers talk about, watches that rappers flex, okay? Who knows how much those cost? But to the employees that just lost their job, who didn't get a satisfactory reason as to why, they look at it and they think, oh, dude, this guy took too much money out of the business. That's why I'm losing my damn job, and they start projecting that. Immediately, okay, what do you think starts to happen to the other 240 employees in the business? Because once again, those 60 employees immediately started talking about that in the company Slack channel. Company didn't even catch it, by the way, until like the next morning. So it was a whole night worth of just chaos in the Slack channel. 240 employees, cancer spread into their mind. Propaganda, negative propaganda from internally in the company spread into their mind, okay? Now here's what starts to happen. Clients start to try to communicate to the people that they did the front-end acquisition deal with. Emails are bouncing back and it's like, hey, this person's email no longer exists. The client, remember, clients are unsold. They're technically skeptical until the result has been met, okay? So the clients who have not gotten the result yet see an email bounce back from a company that they're relatively skeptical about, even though they bought. And then the employees, they hit up those employees, let's say via cell phone, and they're like, hey, what's going on? And the employees start to spread that propaganda to the clients. Dude, this shit spiraled out of control so fast. It was insane. This was, once again, an actually legitimate company, not a scam, an actually legitimate company that was delivering, fulfilling, doing all of the right things, that did a horrendous job at maintaining growth mode, okay, by one simple decision. That's the emphasis I'm trying to make. The switch, instead of staying in growth mode, they flicked the switch unknowingly into survival mode, flicked the domino, and then it led to a chaotic end result that they did not anticipate or expect, okay? What do you think happens to the other 240 employees? Well, right away, you bet your ass, phase 2 of that 2-phase plan kicks into effect, and they're like, all right, well, we're gonna let go of the entire front-end acquisition team. Let's let go of the other 60. These dumbasses do the same thing. They forgot to remove them from Slack again. Can't make this up. So the same thing happens again. The 60 people who are newly fired, okay? So they're down to like, what, 180 people now in the staff, all back end in like multi-millions of square footage of warehouse space are tweaking out. Everybody's in survival mode. I'll never forget this. Like, it gets so chaotic from here. Like, the executives in the companies that they hired, from like the CMO, the president, like the operations manager, like pretty much everybody other than the business owners just starts to go into this state of like, I gotta protect my own ass. Like, they're like scrubbing the fact they worked for the company. Like, everybody's just highly skeptical. Everybody's spreading like literal lies, like just like straight up lies. I remember one of the companies that they acquired that was maintaining a substantial, like millions of dollars worth of product that this company had. That company like puts a lien on the inventory they are owned by that company. And like, it made no sense. It made no sense. People just start doing all kinds of dumb, irrational stuff because once again, they're in survival mode. Survival mode gets chaotic. Like survival mode is everybody trying to protect themselves. It's the sales manager trying to protect his reputation, trying to protect his people and making sure they get paid because he put his word on the line. Survival mode is, once again, the advertiser having confidence that you're gonna consistently scale. Once again, the financial goals that individual has can be met, exceeded, because of the impact they wanna make and you consistently putting more money into it. The confidence diminishes, the trust diminishes. It's like if you're in a relationship and you cheat on somebody, can you expect that relationship's trust to go back to the same as what it once was when it was pure and untainted? No, it's not how it works. It's like, it's not how it works at all. Once you cross that line, it's like there's just a general like distrust and almost like a reservation that is in everybody from that point forward. You know what I mean? And to be clear, dude, survival mode comes in the form of, okay, hey, a portion of the staff get let go. Like, you think staff don't talk to each other? Like, regardless of whether they were removed from Slack or not. Like, you don't think your staff talks to your clients when they're responsible for bringing the clients in and the front-end acquisition team? Of course they do. Dude, this company specifically, just to continue that story real quick, oh my God, it took like a month, like a literal month after that second wave of layoffs to have infinite chargebacks, to have like every government organization that you can possibly report this to, get this reported to in mass. I'll never forget like the Reddit threads and like the fucking online TikTok videos and like Facebook groups that started popping up. I mean, this was just horrendous for like the domino effect once again of what occurs, okay? Now, look, I just wanna be clear, okay? Not everything is gonna be as dramatic as that scenario I just outlaid to you, okay? But to be clear and fair, it's an example that happened to a company doing $5.5 million a month that was considering a buyout for like dude, they were considering a minority buyout for like $50, $60 million in the summer. By literally the end of the year, they were like using the word bankruptcy. That's how fast shit can turn when you go into survival mode, okay? And the opposite is also true. Dude, when you stay in growth mode, okay, you grow the business tremendously fast. That same business that got to $5.5 million a month didn't exist a year and a half before. So that means, yeah, a business that didn't exist within a year and a half got to $5.5 million a month. And they did so sustainably, by the way. It wasn't like a chaotic, it was a very like, this is gonna perpetuate forever kind of feeling until they made that decision to go into survival mode, okay? So to be clear, dude, growth mode, high probabilities for $1 million months. Survival mode, high probabilities apparently for bankruptcy, or at the least, lack of trust, a lack of like enthusiasm to scale it up come time. It's almost like the boy who cried wolf. Oh, you wanna grow it again? Really? You're not gonna tell me in a couple months from now that you wanna stop everything because you wanna cut revenue-driven costs? You know what I mean? So my point being, okay, you love videos like this. Dude, I talk like this all the time inside of my Inner Circle program. It's a group full of rich people trying to get a hell of a lot richer. I'd love to have you a part of it. If you're the right person, the last 10 people, by the way, that joined into this thing, lowest one was 130K a month, highest one was 900K a month. I'm absolutely enthused about the level of people that have been joining into this group, okay? It is awesome. I am so excited. And the whole point of the group, to be clear, rich people trying to get a hell of a lot richer. Twice a month, one-on-one calls, weekly group calls. We do the group calls on Saturday at 11 a.m. We record them all, obviously, if you can't make it. We do 4 times a year masterminds in person. We stream them remote. We also record them, obviously, so you can watch them at a later date. And we have a group chat. We do it on Telegram. Everybody asking questions, sharing things that are working. It's so fun. It's my favorite program I offer by far. And I love promoting it to the right people. It's an application process, of course. We don't sell it to everybody. It's a very limited thing, okay? It's not like some fake bullshit scarcity thing I'm telling you right now. We do limit who can go in because at the end of the day, I'm not putting turds in front of people that are trying to get to $1 million a month, already doing a couple $100K a month. I wanna put people already doing a couple $100K a month. And by the way, for the $1 million a month earners who are watching this, we already got guys in there doing a couple $1 million a month too, okay? So we got the right thing for everybody in there, long story short. And we'd love to have you a part of it. The link's down in the description. At the very least, whether you do that or not, check out some of my other videos. My entire channel is dedicated to helping you get to $1 million a month, or at least increasing your probability to do so. Like the video, I'd appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel so you can get ongoing updates from us, and make sure you consume all these other future videos. I don't waste your time. I make sure that these things are valuable. I hope you appreciate that and you recognize that. Please comment any feedback that you have, any video requests that you have, and I will be happy to consider them. Enjoy the videos, and talk soon.